The seat beneath the camera. Madison Reed was already pulling out the chair when I came back to life. I saved your favorite seat, she said. The smile was warm enough to fool anyone who had not died because of her. The chair stood in the back right corner of the Ridgemont Academy Conference Hall, 2 rows from the wall. Above it, a black dome camera faced the center aisle. From the floor, it looked as if the entire room was covered. It was not. In my first life, I learned about the 6-foot blind strip beneath that camera after it was too late. Madison sat behind me during the Franklin Merit Fellowship examination, copied half my answers, and then accused me of selling them to her. The foundation found our papers nearly identical. Ridgemont accepted forged messages bearing my name. Madison's mother found 3 trustees willing to describe her daughter as a victim. The camera found nothing. I lost the fellowship that would have paid for 4 years of college. Northeastern placed my admission under review. My mother emptied her savings for an education attorney we could not afford, and I worked closing shifts at a 24-hour grocery store while taking classes at the community college. 4 months later, driving home through a February storm, I saw headlights slide across the median. My last clear memory was not the impact. It was Madison's early admission photograph glowing on my cracked phone beside me. She wore a white dress and a gold honor cord. Under the photograph, she had written, "Truly excellent people never need to steal someone else's future." Then the world went white. Now I stood in the examination hall on October 17, 18 years old again, with my father's old watch ticking against my wrist and the Franklin Fellowship packet unopened in my hand. Madison tapped the chair. "Evelyn." I looked at the wall clock. 8:12 a.m. In my first life, I sat down at 8:13. "Not this time, thanks," I said, "but the vent back here is freezing." Her smile held. "You always sit here, then today can be special." I carried my packet toward the center of the hall. 30 finalists from private and public schools across Massachusetts were choosing seats inside 3 marked sections. The Franklin Foundation allowed open seating within assigned color zones because every desk was identical and every candidate used a coded booklet. My badge was blue, so was Madison's. At the center of the blue section stood desk B14. Directly above it hung the new 4-lens camera the Foundation had installed after a testing dispute the previous spring. Unlike Ridgemont's older wall cameras, it belonged to the Foundation and uploaded footage to an off-site server. I knew that because, in my first life, I read every page of the investigation manual after there was nothing left to save. I placed my packet on B14. Madison followed. "This is a terrible angle," she said lightly. "For what?" Her eyes met mine. For 1 second, the charm vanished, then she set her packet on B15, directly behind me. Of course she did. Madison's entire plan required my work. Changing seats would inconvenience her. It would not change her intention. Her friends adjusted around us. Chloe Bennett took B18 near the aisle. Tessa Moore chose B21, 2 rows behind Chloe. Naomi Brooks hovered between B16 and B17 until Madison gave the smallest tilt of her head. Naomi selected B17. Ryan Cole was not a finalist. He stood near the stage in a Navy student volunteer blazer, checking laptop connections for the Foundation staff. At Ridgemont, he ran the Student Council's Technology Committee and had administrator access to half the school's event systems. In my first life, he swore he had never touched the camera archive. The archive had been overwritten 48 hours later. I took out my phone before the collection deadline and photographed the room. Madison laughed behind me, documenting the big day. Exactly. The photograph showed my numbered desk, the ceiling camera, the wall clock, and the blue zone map taped beside the entrance. I emailed it to myself, my mother, and Mr. Grant, my statistics teacher. Subject, Franklin Final, CP14, 8:14 a.m. Then I opened the Foundation's candidate portal and downloaded the rules for the 3rd time. A woman in a charcoal suit approached from the stage. Dr. Lena Walsh had been the Franklin Foundation's Director of Assessment for 11 years. In my first life, I met her only after Madison's accusation, when Ridgemont had already framed the facts. This time, I stood before she could pass. "Dr. Walsh," she checked my badge. "Evelyn Parker, I have 2 procedural questions." Several nearby students turned. "Go ahead. Is the overhead recording retained by the Foundation or by Ridgemont?" "The Foundation. It uploads directly to our contracted examination archive." "Can school employees alter the original?" Her eyebrows rose. "No, Ridgemont receives no administrator credentials." "Why?" "I read about last spring's testing dispute. That was true." I had read about it 3 months from now, but truth did not always require a timestamp. "And the scratch sheets," I continued, "are they collected with the exam?" "Every sheet. They're barcoded to your candidate number." if we correct an answer, should we erase it or strike through it? Strike through once so the original remains legible. The written instructions say the same. Thank you. Dr. Walsh studied me for a moment. Are you concerned about something specific? Madison had gone very still behind me. I could have pointed at her. I could have told Dr. Walsh that Madison planned to copy from me, that Chloe would distribute answers during the break, and that Tessa already had a rumor drafted for the school's anonymous gossip page, but I had no proof yet. Memory was not evidence, and people who heard an impossible warning often decided the warning itself was suspicious. I'm concerned about following the procedure correctly, I said. Then you are already ahead of most candidates. She moved on. Madison leaned toward me. Since when are you obsessed with cameras? Since this morning. You're acting strange. I turned enough to see her. She was beautiful in the polished Ridgemont way, dark blonde hair, pearl studs, a navy sweater fitted perfectly over the school's white blouse. Her face appeared on admissions brochures, charity gala screens, and the student council homepage. People mistook visibility for virtue. Maybe you never paid attention before, I said. Color touched her cheeks. At 8:25, staff collected all phones and sealed them in numbered pouches. Smartwatches, earbuds, tablets, and calculators with stored text were collected too. Candidates passed through a handheld metal detector before returning to their desks. I surrendered my phone and my father's watch. Madison surrendered an iPhone, an Apple Watch, and a pair of earbuds. In my first life, she had carried a second phone inside a zippered sanitary products case. I did not know whether she would repeat every detail. Rebirth returned me to a river, not a photograph. People could choose different currents. Still, when she returned from the collection table, the right pocket of her skirt hung slightly heavier than the left. I faced forward. Dr. Walsh took the microphone. The Franklin Merit Fellowship final assessment consists of 3 sections. Section 1 is quantitative analysis. Section 2 is a public policy case. Section 3 is an argumentative essay based on materials provided today. You will have a supervised 15-minute break. After Section 2, the fellowship was administered by a private nonprofit, not by a university. It paid tuition, required fees, and a standard housing allowance at any accredited 4-year college in the United States. More than 6,000 seniors had applied. 30 of us remained. My mother earned $58,000 a year as an emergency department nurse. My father's life insurance had kept us in our small house after he died, but it would not pay for college. I had admission offers, strong grades, and no family wealth waiting behind them. Madison had all 3. Her father owned a commercial real estate firm. Her mother, Margaret Reed, sat on Ridgemont's board and chaired its advancement committee. Madison did not need the Franklin money, she needed the Franklin name. The fellowship placed winners in national newspapers. Past recipients attended the White House Science Fair, testified before state legislatures, and entered universities as the kind of students donors remembered. Madison wanted the line beneath her photograph. I wanted the education. Dr. Walsh held up a sealed plastic packet. Any candidate who gives, receives, transmits, or attempts to obtain unauthorized assistance will be removed from consideration. Coordinated misconduct may also be reported to the candidate's school under its own published policy. The packet seals broke at 8:59. At 9, the clock began. I wrote my name nowhere. The booklet carried only candidate number F, 1187. The first section presented municipal transit data, ridership, cost per route mile, income by district, and service complaints before and after a fare change. We had 90 minutes to calculate results and recommend whether the city should expand a discounted pass program. My hands shook for the first 2 questions, not because the math was difficult, because I remembered another version of the room, the scrape of Madison's shoe behind me, her breath when she leaned forward, the investigator asking why our uncommon rounding error matched, the dean placing my transcript in a red folder, Mum saying, "We'll fix it," even after the lawyer requested a retainer larger than her savings account. I closed my eyes. The past wanted to turn every sound into a warning. I pressed both feet to the floor. Desk B, 14, camera above me, foundation archive off-site, numbered scratch paper beneath my hand. This was not the same room because I was not the same girl. I began again. For problem 4, I calculated the percentage increase in low-income ridership after the pilot program. My first result was 18%. I wrote it in the answer space. Behind me, Fabric whispered. I did not turn. I moved to the next problem, then noticed the denominator in the table. I had divided by total post-program riders instead of baseline low-income riders. The correct increase was 14.8%. Following Dr. Walsh's instruction, I drew one line through 18.4, wrote 14.8 beside it, and added the full recalculation to scratch sheet 1. Madison's pencil did not move again on that page. She had copied the first number. I felt no triumph, not yet. One coincidence proved nothing. Problem 9 asked us to estimate annual cost using monthly pilot data. I initially multiplied by 10 because the pilot's table covered 10 reporting periods. Then I reread the prompt, annualize the average monthly cost. I struck through the first figure and showed the 12-month calculation. Madison shifted behind me. At 10:11, I raised my hand. A proctor approached. Additional scratch sheet, please. She scanned the barcode on my first sheet, placed it face down in a collection tray, and handed me sheet 2. The camera recorded the transfer. My reasoning now existed outside my possession before the exam ended. At 10:29, Dr. Walsh called time. All pencils went down. Staff collected section 1 before distributing section 2. Madison could not revise the figures she had copied. As the proctor lifted her booklet, I saw 18, for in the answer box 4. Problem 4, she covered it with her hand. Too late. Our eyes met. She smiled. The old Evelyn would have wondered whether she imagined it. The new one smiled back. Section 2 described a fictional state considering an automated system to identify fraudulent unemployment claims. We received a statute excerpt, an agency budget, an error rate study, and testimony from 3 affected workers. The task was to recommend whether the legislature should approve the program and what safeguards it should require. This was my strongest kind of work. Facts did not become fair merely because they were numerical. Systems could be efficient and still crush the people least able to appeal. I organized my answer around 3 tests: legal authority, error distribution, and procedural remedy. My first thesis supported a limited pilot if the agency added human review. Then I found a line in the statute that barred automatic suspension of benefits before written notice and an opportunity to respond. The proposed vendor system would freeze payments immediately. I revised my recommendation: no deployment under the current contract. The legislature should require pre-deprivation notice, independent error audits, language access, and a fast appeal before approving funds. Behind me, Madison copied my original, limited pilot, thesis. She did not copy the statutory conflict because she had already moved to the next page. At 11:03, her shoe touched the back leg of my chair, once, twice, in our old friendship. That had been a signal. Slow down, tilt the page, move your arm. We had not been close for months, but Madison behaved as if every kindness I had once given her remained a permanent resource. I kept writing at my natural pace. Her shoes struck the chair harder. Dr. Walsh looked up. Madison bent over her booklet. At 11:18, a proctor changed position and stood at the rear wall. Madison stopped moving for 6 full minutes. When the proctor crossed to the other aisle, the whisper of fabric returned. The camera above us saw all of it. At 11:45, Section 2 ended. Candidates were instructed to remain seated while booklets and scratch sheets were counted. Then blue zone students were released to the east hallway, red zone students to the west, and green zone students to the library foyer. No one could claim. The break began chaotically. I waited until the proctor called B14. Madison rose when B15 was called. Near the hallway entrance, a volunteer gave each of us a paper cup with a cardboard sleeve. Coffee, tea, and bottled water stood on separate tables. Madison chose coffee. She pulled off the sleeve and rolled it between her fingers. In my first life, I never saw what she wrote. Naomi later admitted there had been numbers inside the sleeve, but she withdrew her statement after Margaret Reed threatened her family with a lawsuit. This time, the east hallway had 2 visible foundation cameras and 1 mirrored dome above the refreshment station. Madison had not studied the ceiling. I had. I took a bottle of water and moved beside Dr. Walsh. Madison could not pass anything while I was watching without making my attention look suspicious, so I asked Dr. Walsh a genuine question about whether a quotation in Section 3 required formal citation. Madison used the opportunity exactly as I remembered. She turned her back to us, wrote inside the flattened cup sleeve, and carried it toward the trash station. Chloe approached from the opposite side. They bumped shoulders. The sleeve vanished from Madison's hand. Chloe continued toward the restroom. Naomi saw it. Her face lost color. Tessa stood near the restroom corridor, pretending to read a Franklin Foundation poster. Chloe brushed past her. Tessa looked down at something in her palm. The network was not subtle when viewed from above. People rarely imagine themselves from the camera's angle. Ms. Parker, Dr. Walsh had answered my question and was waiting. Sorry, I said. So parenthetical reference to the source label is enough. Yes, this is not a bibliography exercise, thank you. Across the hall, Naomi stared at me. I held her gaze for 1 second, then looked deliberately at the mirrored dome above us. She followed my eyes, her mouth opened. Madison returned from the coffee table. There you are, she said to Naomi. Come with me. Naomi did. Fear still had authority over her, I understood. In my first life, fear had authority over me too. The break ended at noon. Before re-entering, every candidate passed the metal detector again. When it reached Madison's right hip, it beeped. The volunteer asked her to empty her pocket. Madison produced a foil-wrapped packet of pain relievers. Cramps, she said. Embarrassed, the volunteer glanced toward Dr. Walsh. Medication was allowed if declared. Madison's health form listed ibuprofen. She opened the packet. 2 tablets. The wand passed silently the second time. No phone, different current, or a better hiding place. I returned to B14. Section 3 asked whether public high schools should use private donations to fund essential student services. The materials included a donor agreement, a school budget, testimony from teachers, and an editorial defending philanthropic flexibility. I nearly laughed. Madison's mother had built her influence at Ridgemont through gifts, a renovated theater, a wellness center, a college counseling initiative. None of those gifts was criminal, all of them purchased gratitude. And gratitude was the softest material from which to build a cage. I wrote about dependence. Private money could expand opportunity, but essential services should not depend on conditions controlled by a single donor. Schools needed conflict disclosures, independent allocation, published criteria, and continuity funds that could survive a donor's anger. Behind me, Madison went still. Perhaps she thought I was writing about her family. I was also writing a better essay than she could steal. This time, she could see my sentences, but not the source labels I cited in the margin of my booklet. She copied the structure and several phrases while attaching evidence that contradicted them. At 1:06, Dr. Walsh announced 30 minutes remaining. Madison's breathing sharpened. At 1:18, she dropped her pencil. It rolled beneath my chair. Sorry, she whispered. She bent low, one hand reaching for the pencil while her eyes lifted toward the final page of my essay. The overhead camera had an unobstructed view of her face. I moved neither the booklet nor my arm. I simply waited. A proctor arrived. Return to your seat, Ms. Reed. My pencil. The proctor retrieved it and placed it on Madison's desk. Do not enter another candidate's workspace. Every student in the blue zone heard. Madison sat with red climbing up her neck. I finished my final paragraph. At 1:36, time expired. We closed our booklets. Proctors collected every paper, counted every barcode, and sealed each section in transparent evidence bags. Candidates could not leave until all materials were accounted for. At 1:49, Dr. Walsh dismissed us. I collected my phone pouch at the exit. Before I could break the seal, Madison touched my elbow. We need to talk, do we? Privately, no. Her fingernails pressed through my sweater. I looked down at her hand. She released me. Students poured into the lobby, where parents waited beneath banners bearing Franklin's Blue Torch logo. Mom stood near the doors in hospital scrubs under her winter coat. She had come straight from a 12-hour shift. Seeing her alive almost broke me. In the first life, the months after the accusation carved shadows beneath her eyes, she stopped buying coffee at work, stopped turning on the heat before November, stopped saying how much the lawyer cost. Now she waved with both hands. I crossed the lobby and held her so tightly that she laughed. Was it that bad? It was long. That is not an answer. I think I did well. That is an answer. Over her shoulder, I saw Margaret Reed enter through the trustees' corridor. She wore a camel coat and the expression of a woman who considered every building partly hers. Madison met her near the portrait gallery. Chloe, Tessa, Naomi, and Ryan gathered around them. Margaret's gaze found me. Madison said something. Her mother looked toward the ceiling cameras. Then she looked back at me. The assessment had ended. The real examination had begun. At 3:07 that afternoon, the anonymous Ridgemont account posted. Franklin finalist allegedly offered answers to multiple candidates. Scholarship fraud at our own school. The Post did not name me. It did not need to. Madison and I were Ridgemont's only Franklin finalists. Her mother chaired the advancement committee. I was the student whose tuition assistance had been debated at 3 parent meetings by people who called scholarships special treatment. Within 20 minutes, someone added my yearbook photograph. Within 30, Tessa published an article on the student newspaper website titled, "Questions Surround Franklin Examination Integrity." She quoted an unnamed candidate. One student appeared to make her paper deliberately visible and had discussed financial compensation before the examination. Mom read the article at our kitchen counter. Her scrubs were still on. A mug of reheated soup sat untouched beside her. Is this about you? In my first life? I said no. I told her there had been a misunderstanding, that the school would fix it, that she should sleep before her next shift. By the time I told her the whole truth, Ridgemont's version had already hardened around us. This time, I unlocked my phone and showed her the photograph of desk B14. Madison copied from me. Mum's eyes lifted. During the exam, yes. Did anyone see? The camera did. I told her everything I could prove, the seat, the overhead recording, the scratch paper transfer, Madison's repeated movements, the hallway exchange, and the proctor's warning when Madison entered my workspace. I did not tell her I had died on County Road 6, not yet. Mum listened without interrupting. When I finished, she picked up her phone. Who are you calling? The school. Call the foundation first. She paused. That was another lesson from the first life. We had treated Ridgemont as the authority because it was my school, but the foundation owned the exam, the cameras, and the evidence. Ridgemont owned a reputation it would protect before it protected me. I opened the candidate portal. The incident form asked for facts, approximate times, witnesses, and requested preservation. I wrote, I believe candidate Madison Reed repeatedly viewed my examination booklet from desk B15. Please preserve all video from the blue zone, east hallway, refreshment area, and materials collection stations from 8:00 a.m. through 2:00 p.m. Please also preserve seating records, proctor notes, scratch sheet scans, booklet images, and chain of custody logs. I described the cup sleeve exchange without guessing what it contained. I attached my pre-exam photograph and the anonymous post. Then I copied the foundation's compliance address, Dr. Walsh, Ridgemont's headmaster, my guidance counselor. And Mr. Grant. Mum watched me press send. How did you know to ask for all of that? Because I spent the last months of my first life learning what had disappeared. I read the rules, Evelyn, and I was scared. That answer was also true. At 3:31, the foundation portal generated a receipt. At 3:36, Dr. Walsh replied, your report has been received. A preservation hold has been placed on all identified examination materials and video. Do not communicate with other candidates about the substance of the assessment or investigation. At 3:42, Headmaster Philip Ames called. Mum put him on speaker. Mrs. Parker, Evelyn, I understand there are competing concerns about this morning's examination. There is a public accusation about my daughter. Mum said, no student has been officially identified. Her photograph is under the post. Social media moves faster than facts. We would prefer not to escalate until the foundation conducts its review, then remove the newspaper article. The student press has editorial independence. I almost admired the speed with which independence appeared when the lie benefited Madison. Does that independence include publishing an accusation during a confidential investigation? I asked. Headmaster Ames went quiet. Evelyn, I hope you understand that public argument may jeopardize everyone involved. I have made no public statement. Good, keep it that way. Will Madison receive the same instruction? We are speaking with all relevant students. He never answered yes. The call ended at 4:05. Madison texted me, why did you report me? I took a screenshot. Then another message appeared, I was going to help you, now I can't. Another screenshot, you know how this looks. We had the same answers because you kept turning your paper. Screenshot, if they ask, tell them we studied together and got confused about what was allowed. I forwarded the messages to the foundation case number without replying. At 4:17, Madison deleted all 4 from the messaging app. My copies remained. Mum finally sat. She is asking you to lie. Yes, and she knows there's a camera, now she does. Mum looked at the photograph again. Desk B14 stood in the center beneath the dark circle of glass. You chose that seat on purpose. Yes, because you knew she would copy. The kitchen seemed to shrink. Rain tapped the window above the sink. The clock clicked toward 5. In another life, I had come home from the exam excited and exhausted, unaware that Madison was already building the accusation that would destroy me, because she has taken my work before. I said, that was true too. Madison had copied chemistry labs, campaign speeches, and a history presentation from me over 3 years. Each time, she called it collaboration. Each time I protested, she cried about pressure, family expectations, and how one bad grade would prove everyone thought she was only rich. I had mistaken her fear for permission. Mum reached across the counter. Then we do not speak to the school without someone representing you. We can't afford a lawyer, we can afford a consultation. In the first life, she had said the same thing after the accusation was formal. By then, the consultation became a war. This time, evidence existed before the first meeting. The foundation has an ombud's office. I said, candidates can request a support person and an independent reviewer. Request both. I did, for once. Preparation did not feel like panic, it felt like power. The next morning, Ridgemont tried to punish silence. Headmaster Ames summoned me before first period. His assistant met Mum and me outside his office and led us past the normal conference room into the board salon, where oil portraits of Ridgemont founders watched from dark wood walls. Margaret Reed was already seated, so was Madison. The email had described the meeting as an administrative fact-finding conference. It had not disclosed that the accused candidate and her trustee mother would attend. Mum stopped in the doorway. We were not told this would be a joint meeting. Headmaster Ames rose. Mrs. Reed is here in her capacity as a parent. She is also a board member. I understand the sensitivity. Then why is she sitting in a board meeting room? Margaret smiled as if Mum had made a charming mistake. This is simply the available space. I photographed the seating chart on the door, which listed board salon. Trustee priority, Evelyn. Headmaster Ames said, phones should remain away during student matters. I'm documenting who is present. That is unnecessary. Then it won't hurt anything. Madison stared at me across the polished table. She had replaced yesterday's navy sweater with a pale blue cashmere one. No makeup appeared beneath her eyes. The effect suggested sleepless innocence. In my first life, she wore the same color to my disciplinary conference. I don't want this to become ugly, she said. You posted an accusation before I got home. I didn't post anything. Tessa did. Tessa is a journalist. Tessa is your campaign manager. Margaret folded her hands. We are not here to trade allegations. Your daughter's allegation is why we're here. Mum's voice stayed calm. Nurses learned calm in rooms where panic made everything worse. Headmaster Ames opened a folder. The school has received a preliminary concern that Evelyn made her answers visible to other candidates and may have discussed payment before the exam. From whom? Mum asked. Student reports are confidential. My report went to the foundation. I said, who reported me to Ridgemont? He glanced at Margaret. The movement was small, it answered. There is also a screenshot. He continued. He turned a printed image toward us. It showed a conversation under my name. Me. I can get you through Franklin. Madison. What do you want? Me. 5K after results. I'll make sure you can see everything. Madison. This is wrong. Me. Then lose. The timestamp read 10:43 p.m. The night before the exam. My profile image was correct. The background matched the messaging app 1 used in my first life. That screenshot crushed me. My phone contained no matching conversation, but the school argued I had deleted it. Madison produced a screen recording that appeared to open the messages inside her account. Ryan later told investigators metadata could not establish who created the account because the relevant logs had expired. Now I looked at the printout and felt something colder than fear. Recognition. They had not changed the script. Please send the original file to the foundation, I said. Margaret's smile faded. Headmaster Ames tapped the paper. Do you deny sending these messages? Yes. Can you explain why they appear on Madison's phone? I can explain that screenshots can be fabricated. A forensic examiner can explain how this one was. Madison spoke softly. I have a screen recording. Submit your phone. Her eyes hardened. You don't get to search my phone. I don't want it. The foundation does. Margaret leaned forward. No minor should be coerced into surrendering private medical, family, and legal communications because another student demands it. The exam rules allow the foundation to request devices voluntarily submitted as evidence. I said, she can refuse. They can decide what that refusal means. Headmaster Ames frowned. You seem unusually familiar with investigative procedure. You seem unusually unfamiliar with your own student handbook. Mum placed her hand over mine beneath the table, not to stop me, to remind me I was not alone. The headmaster's tone cooled. Until the matter is resolved, the school is placing both students under interim academic integrity restrictions. You may attend class, but you may not hold leadership positions, represent Ridgemont publicly, or access restricted academic systems. Madison turned toward him. Both. That was not what she expected. Even performative neutrality felt like injury to someone accustomed to exemption. The same interim measure will apply, he said. Margaret's voice sharpened. My daughter is student body president. Removing her 3 weeks before the Founders Gala would destabilize the event. I edit the literary magazine, I said. Apparently that can be destabilized. This is not comparable. Why? No one answered. The restrictions were unfair to me, but the visible equality prevented Margaret from claiming Ridgemont had already cleared Madison. I could appeal after the Foundation's review. I want the measure and its reasons in writing, I said. I also want confirmation that my transcript will not be altered and colleges will not be notified before a final finding. Headmaster Ames looked tired. The school does not report unresolved allegations. Put that in writing too. The meeting ended without my confession. Madison caught me in the hall while our mothers remained behind. You're making this worse. Students passing the administrative wing slowed. For whom? for everyone. There are 5 people in your definition of everyone. She stepped closer. If you had stayed in the corner, none of this would be happening. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. What does the corner have to do with it? Her face changed. Nothing. Which corner, Madison? You know what I mean. I really want to hear you say it. She looked at the students around us, then she smiled brightly. I hope the truth comes out. So do I. Tessa stood at the far end of the hall with her phone angled toward us. I raised my voice enough for the recording. Please preserve that video, Tessa. The foundation may request it. She lowered the phone. By lunch, a new rumor circulated. I had selected B14 to trap Madison after arranging an answer exchange. The logic required me to sell answers, invite copying, choose the best recorded seat in the room, preserve my scratch work, report the incident first, and demand forensic review of the supposed payment messages. Ridgemont's students believed it anyway, not all of them. In statistics, Mr. Grant closed the classroom door after the bell. No discussion of an active disciplinary matter, he told the class, that includes insinuation, anonymous posting, and the courageous act of whispering loudly enough for the target to hear. 3 students looked down. He began the lesson without glancing at me. After class, he handed me a slim folder. Inside were copies of 4 assignments Madison and I had completed over the previous 2 years. Why are you giving me these? I'm informing you that I preserved them and reported a pattern to the foundation this morning. The assignments contained identical unusual phrasing, identical spreadsheet labels, and, in one chemistry lab, the same transposed measurement. My submissions were time-stamped first. Madison's arrived hours or days later. You noticed, I suspected collaboration that exceeded the assignment's rules. Every time I asked, you told me you had studied together. Shame rose through me. She said one accusation would destroy her record, and you thought protecting her was kinder than telling the truth. It was not a question. Yes, kindness without boundaries becomes labor for the least kind person in the room. I looked at the papers. Why didn't you report it before? Suspicion is not proof, and you denied misconduct. I could not build a case against another student by treating your denial as consent. That answer mattered. Adults in my first life had either failed to protect me or claimed they knew what was best. Mr. Grant admitted the limit of his authority without pretending the pattern had been invisible. Will you speak at the hearing? I already agreed. I left with no folder in my hand and one more piece of evidence held by someone else. At 2:40, Dr. Walsh emailed the first preservation summary. All examination video had been secured. All booklets were being scanned by a vendor that identified candidates only by number. Proctor notes included an entry at 1:18 p.m. Candidate B15 entered B14 workspace while retrieving dropped pencil, directed to return to seat. The foundation requested voluntary forensic images of my phone and Madison's phone limited to a date range, application data, and specified communications. A neutral examiner would filter unrelated private content. I consented at 2:47. Madison refused at 3:02. At 3:18. Margaret's attorney sent a letter accusing the foundation of discriminatory and disproportionate intrusion. At 3:26. Madison posted, I will not surrender my entire private life because someone planned an elaborate trap. At 3:41, the foundation responded that refusal was permitted but might limit the weight given to evidence that could not be authenticated. At 4:10, Madison agreed to produce only the screen recording, not her device. She was still trying to control which layer of truth anyone could touch. The examiner accepted the file and preserved its metadata. Then the foundation asked the messaging platform to retain account records associated with both usernames. It could not obtain message content without legal process, but login history, account creation time, and recovery addresses remained available under the platform's safety policy and Madison's consent to authenticate her evidence. That was the detail Ryan had not anticipated. The account using my name had been created at 9:56 p.m. the night before the examination. My real account was 4 years old. The fake account's recovery email belonged to an address registered with the Ridgemont Student Council Technology Desk. Ryan controlled it. The screen recording was real, the conversation inside it was not. Someone had created a second account using my name and photograph, messaged Madison, and recorded the result. At 5:12, the foundation expanded the investigation to include fabrication of evidence. At 5:20, Ryan stopped answering school emails. At 5:31, Margaret arrived at our house. She did not call first. Mum was at work. I saw Margaret through the living room window as she walked up the path in heels unsuited to our cracked pavement. A black sedan waited at the curb with its engine running. I did not open the door. Evelyn, she called, I know you're home. I checked the blue notice beside the frame, video and audio recording in use after a package theft the previous year. Mum installed a doorbell camera and a second camera above the garage, both uploaded to cloud storage. In my first life, Margaret came through this door and sat at our kitchen table. She told Mum that wealthy families could survive scandal while girls like me could not. She offered to protect my admission if I signed a statement admitting I had blurred academic boundaries. I had nearly signed. Now I spoke through the camera. Please contact my mother and the foundation in writing. This should not involve lawyers. Your lawyer sent a letter 2 hours ago. Her eyes flicked toward the camera. I am here as a mother. So was mine at the meeting you arranged without notice. Madison is frightened. She should tell the truth. The truth is rarely as simple as teenagers believe. This one has timestamps. Her jaw tightened. Your fixation on procedure may feel protective, but institutions do not reward students who embarrass them. There it was, the threat beneath every Ridgemont kindness. Belonging was conditional on making power comfortable. Is that a message from the school? Don't be childish. You're a trustee standing outside a student's house during an investigation. I'm asking whether you're speaking for Ridgemont. I am speaking for everyone who understands consequences. The camera understands them too. She glanced up again. Turn that off. No. Margaret stepped back. Madison says you have always resented her. Madison has always mistaken refusal for resentment. You could both lose everything. Then she should stop submitting fabricated evidence. For the first time, Margaret looked startled. The foundation had not publicly disclosed the fake account finding. Ryan must not have warned her yet. I don't know what you mean. Good. You can explain that in writing. I ended the connection. Margaret remained on the porch for 11 seconds, then she walked back to the car. I saved the recording, downloaded a copy, and submitted it to the foundation and Ridgemont's board ethics address. Mum called from the emergency department supply room. She came to the house. She stayed outside. Lock everything. Already done. Her breath trembled. I should come home. You have 6 hours left. You are more important than a shift. In my first life, she had missed so many shifts for meetings that Ridgemont later cited our desperation as motive for selling answers. This life was not going to consume her by inches. The cameras are on. Mrs. Alvarez is next door. Mr. Grant knows. Stay at work unless you want to leave. Silence. When did you become 40? She asked. When I died at 19, this week. She came home at the end of her shift. We ate reheated pasta at midnight and watched the porch video. Once, Mom did not cry. She wrote down the name of every person copied on our next email. The foundation froze all Franklin results for 72 hours while independent reviewers compared the examinations. Madison treated the delay as persecution. On Monday morning, she entered the dining hall surrounded by Chloe and Tessa. Naomi followed several steps behind. Ryan had not attended school since Friday. Conversation softened as they passed. Madison climbed onto the low stage used for club announcements. I wasn't going to say anything, she began. That sentence always meant she had planned every word. But anonymous rumors are hurting multiple students. I want everyone to know that I have cooperated with the school. I will not participate in online cruelty, and I forgive anyone who acted out of fear. She looked directly at me, the dining hall filled with phones. She was offering forgiveness before facts because forgiveness placed her above judgment. In my first life, I fled, this time. I finished pouring milk into my coffee, then I turned. Did you create a fake account using my name? The room went silent. Madison's expression did not move. I'm not discussing confidential evidence. You climbed onto a stage. A laugh escaped from somewhere near the kitchen doors. Madison gripped the microphone. I am asking people not to harass either of us. Then asked Tessa to retract the article she posted before an investigation existed. Tessa stepped forward. The article reports allegations of public interest. It says I discussed payment. Did you authenticate the screenshot? I protected my source. Your source fabricated an account. Whispers spread. Madison's face finally changed. You're violating the investigation rules. I'm correcting a public statement about me. I haven't disclosed exam content. Headmaster Ames entered from the side doors. That is enough. He took the microphone from Madison. Students will return to breakfast. No further public statements about the investigation are permitted. Does that include the article? I asked. His face tightened. The newspaper has been instructed to add an editor's note stating that the allegations are disputed. It needs a correction. That determination will follow the final findings. I had not won the exchange, but for the first time, Madison had made a speech and left the stage looking smaller. Naomi found me in the girls' restroom after second period. She checked every stall before locking the main door. I didn't copy from you. Then tell the foundation. Madison says if one of us breaks, her mother will make sure none of our colleges take us. Can she? She knows people. Knowing people is not the same as controlling them. Naomi laughed without humor. Easy for you to say. You have nothing she can take. The words hit an old wound. My financial aid, my fellowship, my admission, my mother's house. People like Madison believed the less money you had, the less you possessed. I have exactly what she tried to take, I said. Naomi looked away. Chloe gave me a number during the break. I didn't use it. Did you keep it? No. Did she send anything? Not then. Before the exam. Naomi's silence answered. Preserve it, I said. Do not forward it to me. Do not edit it. Do not screenshot only the parts that help you. Give the foundation your phone and let the examiner collect the whole conversation. What if it makes me look guilty? Were you guilty? I knew they had a plan. Then you need your own lawyer or support person, not Madison's. Her eyes filled. You want all of us destroyed. In my first life, I did. In the final weeks before the crash, I imagined Madison losing everything in spectacular detail. Her admission, her friends, her mother's board seat, her polished face collapsing in front of every person who had believed her. Now, standing beneath a flickering restroom light, I saw Naomi as she was, frightened, compromised, and still capable of choosing. I want the truth documented, I said. What it does to you depends partly on what you do next. Madison says you planned this. I plan to be visible. Isn't that the same thing? No, I didn't move her pencil. I didn't create her fake account. I didn't put an answer in Chloe's hand. Naomi wiped her cheek. You knew. I knew what she was willing to do. How? The pipes hummed inside the wall. For 1 second, I considered telling her. I died after you stayed silent. I came back remembering the shape of your fear, but truth without proof could become another weapon against me. Experience. I said. Someone tried the restroom door. Naomi unlocked it and left without another word. At lunch, the foundation sent every Blue Zone candidate an individual evidence preservation notice. By evening, Naomi had requested independent counsel through the fellowship's candidate support program. Madison removed her from the group chat. The removal did not erase its history. On Tuesday, Naomi surrendered her phone. On Wednesday, Ryan did too, after Ridgemont informed his parents that refusal could support discipline under the technology use policy. By Thursday, the foundation had a map of the plan. It began 3 weeks before the examination. The group chat was named Founders Gala Logistics. Most messages actually concerned decorations, ticket sales, and speeches. Buried between them were photographs of my study notes taken without permission, comments about where I normally sat, and seating diagrams for the Blue Zone. Madison, Evelyn always takes the back wall. B12 or B13 depending on spacing. Chloe, can you see from behind? Madison, she moves her arm when she writes. She always has. Tessa, and if there's a match. Ryan, old room archive auto-deletes after 48 hours. Angle doesn't show direction anyway. Naomi, this is insane. Madison, it's insurance. She's still top on practice scores. 3 days before the exam. Chloe, what if she changes seats? Madison, she won't. At 10:02 p.m. the night before. Ryan, account ready. Tessa, use money. People believe poor scholarship. Kids have motive. Naomi, I want out. Madison, there is no out after you used my recommendation for Georgetown. At 10:18. Madison, Evelyn will sit in the blind strip. Once I have the answers, she becomes the cheat. At 2:11 p.m., 22 minutes after the exam ended. Tessa, posting in an hour. Madison, wait until she reports or reacts. Chloe, what if she doesn't? Madison, then we report first. At 2:53. Ryan, no report yet. Madison, post now. If she reports after, say it's retaliation. The messages did more than prove cheating. They proved premeditation, fabrication, and retaliation. Naomi's phone contained the continuous conversation with server timestamps. Ryan's device contained the recovery email login and the profile image he used to impersonate me. He claimed he believed the fake account was for a student council skit. The words "use money and she becomes the cheat" made that explanation impossible. Chloe had deleted the chat. Her cloud backup restored it. Tessa refused device review and insisted the newspaper's source protection shielded her. The foundation did not need her phone. Her messages appeared on everyone else's. Madison still refused. Her absence from her own evidence became a hole shaped exactly like guilt. At 4:30 Thursday, Dr. Walsh invited Mum and me to a preliminary findings meeting. The independent reviewer, retired Judge Eleanor Price, appeared by video. Foundation counsel sat beside her. Ridgemont sent Headmaster Ames and its newly hired outside attorney. Margaret was not invited. Judge Price began with the examination papers. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. My booklet showed full work, 3 documented corrections, and citations consistent with my final recommendations. Madison's booklet contained my initial 18% error without the corrected denominator, my 10-period annualization error without the 12-month revision, my first policy thesis supporting a limited pilot, but no discussion of the statute that caused me to reject deployment. 6 phrases identical to mine in the final essay, including an unusual metaphor about donor dependence, paired with source references that did not support those phrases. Chloe's paper contained 2 figures matching Madison's copied errors. Tessa's contained 1, Naomi's contained none. The blind review scores, excluding every disputed response, placed me second among all 30 candidates, including my independently supported responses placed me first, even if the foundation threw away every answer. Madison saw, I still qualified for the fellowship. I gripped Mum's hand. In my first life, people treated my innocence and my merit as the same question. If I had not been the best student, they implied, perhaps losing everything would not matter as much. Now the reviewers separated them. I deserved protection whether I ranked first or 30th. I also ranked first, Judge Price continued. The video establishes a consistent directional sequence. Candidate Parker works before Candidate Reed. Candidate Reed changes activity depending on proctor position. Candidate Reed repeatedly looks toward Parker's paper. Parker does not look back, signal, expose materials beyond ordinary writing posture, or communicate with Reed. The screen changed. A still image showed Madison bent beneath my chair, her eyes lifted toward my final page. Another showed her hand inside the cup sleeve. Another showed the sleeve pass to Chloe. Another showed Chloe brushed Tessa's palm. Headmaster Ames removed his glasses. Foundation Counsel said, the original recordings are time-stamped and cryptographically verified. Ridgemont has no credentials capable of altering them. The headmaster looked as if someone had said the last sentence specifically for him. Perhaps they had. Judge Price read the preliminary conclusion. The available evidence strongly supports that Evelyn Parker completed the assessment independently and was targeted by a coordinated attempt to obtain her answers and portray her as the source of misconduct. Mum exhaled beside me. The sound was small. It contained an entire future we had almost lost. Why preliminary? I asked. Every student must receive notice and an opportunity to respond, Judge Price said. The foundation will hold individual interviews and a formal eligibility review next week. Will my result remain frozen until the review concludes? However, we have notified your colleges that the allegation was disputed and that no adverse finding should be inferred. Headmaster Ames looked toward the attorney. Ridgemont had not notified any college. The public article created inquiries, Dr. Walsh said. We corrected the record. The student newspaper had tried to make suspicion permanent. The foundation had answered with process. At the end of the meeting, Headmaster Ames cleared his throat. Given the preliminary evidence, Ridgemont will lift Evelyn's interim restrictions immediately, and Madison's. I asked. The school will review its measures, based on what? Its own disciplinary authority. The measures were equal when the evidence was unclear. The outside attorney closed her folder. They do not have to remain equal when the evidence is not. It was the first useful sentence anyone from Ridgemont had spoken. At 6:12, my access to the literary magazine drive returned. At 6:30, the school website restored my name as senior editor. At 7:05, Headmaster Ames announced that Madison was taking a temporary leave from student government duties. At 7:17, Margaret Reed called our house. Mum did not answer. At 7:20, an email arrived from Margaret's attorney proposing a private resolution. Madison would withdraw from the Franklin competition for health reasons. Ridgemont would issue no disciplinary finding against either student. Tessa would remove the newspaper article. The Reed Family Foundation would establish a $25,000 college grant for me. In exchange, I would withdraw my complaint, decline public comment, and ask the Franklin Foundation not to refer its findings to Ridgemont or any college. They had moved from $5,000 in a fabricated message to $25,000 in a real offer. Mum read the letter twice. Can they ask you to do that? They just did. What do you want? In the first life, $25,000 would have looked like survival. Now it looked like a price attached to everyone they might hurt after me. I wrote one sentence. I will not trade the accuracy of an academic integrity record for money. Mum added, do not contact my daughter outside formal channels again. We sent both. 10 minutes later, Madison texted from a new number. You think the camera makes you untouchable? I saved it. No. I replied for the first time. It only makes you visible. The formal eligibility review took place the following Tuesday at the Franklin Foundation's Boston office. The building occupied 3 renovated floors above a public library branch. There were no marble donor walls, no portraits, and no Ridgemont students whispering outside the door, just gray carpet, a long conference table, and a digital clock that showed seconds. Mums sat to my right, an ombuds advisor named Celeste Morgan sat to my left. She had explained before the meeting that she did not represent me as a lawyer. Her job was to make sure I understood the process, could review the evidence used against me, and had an opportunity to respond. Madison entered with both parents and 2 attorneys. Peter Reed had not appeared before. He was a broad man with silver at his temples and the restless impatience of someone whose employees usually ended problems before he saw them. He looked at me once, then spoke only to Foundation counsel. Margaret did not look at the ceiling. There were cameras in the room. Every participant had consented to the official recording. Judge Price chaired the panel with 2 educators who had no connection to Ridgemont. Dr. Walsh presented the assessment evidence. A forensic examiner presented the account and device records. Each student's interview would be separate, but because Madison accused me directly, the panel allowed both sides to hear the common evidence before individual questioning. Judge Price began, "This is an eligibility review, not a criminal trial. Our task is to determine whether candidates complied with Foundation rules and whether examination results remain valid. We use a preponderance of evidence standard." Peter whispered to his lawyer. Judge Price waited until he stopped. "We will not debate the standard after beginning." The first video covered the quantitative section. The examiner synchronized 3 angles, the overhead camera, the rear wall camera, and the scanning station where completed scratch sheets were collected. On screen, I wrote the first calculation for problem 4 at 9:22:14. Madison began writing at 9:24:02. After leaning forward 6 times, I noticed the denominator, struck through the answer, and recalculated at 9:28:33. My first scratch sheet left my hands at 10:12. A proctor scanned its barcode immediately. Madison never corrected her copied number. Her attorney objected to the word copied. Judge Price said, "The presenter may describe observed conduct. You may offer an alternative inference." The annualization problem showed the same sequence. Then came the policy case. A writing analyst compared our structure. My thesis changed after I identified the statutory conflict. My scratch notes contained the line, "Current contract unlawful before human review question even arises." Madison's essay used my abandoned limited pilot recommendation but quoted the worker testimony I cited under the later argument. Her reasoning did not merely resemble mine, it resembled a version of mine that no longer existed by the time I submitted. Her attorney tried a new explanation. Ms. Reed and Ms. Parker studied together for years. Shared habits of thought are unsurprising. Mr. Grant's records appeared on screen. For earlier assignments, my timestamps, Madison's later submissions, the same pattern of uncommon phrases and inherited mistakes. Shared habits normally move in both directions, the writing analyst said. Here, the temporal relationship consistently moves from Parker to Reed. Madison sat perfectly still. She had always depended on each incident appearing isolated. One chemistry report was friendship, one copied campaign phrase was admiration, one similar spreadsheet was coincidence, one matching exam response was collaboration. Placed in order, they became a method. The hallway recording followed. Madison flattened the sleeve, her hand moved inside it. She passed it to Chloe. Chloe entered the restroom and returned without the sleeve. Tessa examined her palm, at normal speed. Each gesture lasted seconds, played once in sequence. The whole plan looked embarrassingly clear. The restroom itself was not recorded. Madison's attorney said, "No video shows what was written." "Correct," Dr. Walsh said. "Then the Foundation cannot establish that an answer was transmitted. The papers do." Chloe and Tessa had copied errors that appeared first on Madison's paper and before that on mine. Neither sat close enough to see me. The cup sleeve was never recovered, but the movement of information left tracks across 3 booklets. The final essay video showed Madison dropping her pencil and bending into my workspace. The room microphone captured the proctor's instruction, "Do not enter another candidate's workspace." Madison's attorney paused the recording. "Ms. Parker does not cover her paper." Celeste's pen stopped beside me. Judge Price looked over her glasses. "Is there a rule requiring a candidate to physically conceal ordinary work from the person seated behind her? Candidates must not facilitate copying." "What action do you allege was facilitation?" She selected the most visible seat in the room while believing Madison might look at her paper. "Visibility to the Foundation is not visibility to candidate Reed. She could have reported her concern before the examination." The question turned toward me. Judge Price said, "Ms. Parker will have an opportunity to respond." I waited. The account evidence came next. The examiner explained the fake profile without revealing unrelated personal data. The account was created using a student council recovery email. Ryan's phone stored the new account verification code. The profile image had been downloaded from the Ridgemont directory at 9:51 p.m. The screen recording began 4 minutes after the fake conversation ended. Madison had presented the recording as authentic evidence while refusing examination of the device on which it appeared. Her device was no longer necessary to establish fabrication. Ryan's records and the platform logs did it. The group chat filled the screen. This time, no one could call the messages excerpts. The forensic examiner had verified the continuous database, account identifiers, server timestamps, deletion records, and backups from multiple devices. Ryan's attorney had provided a written statement. He admitted creating the fake account at Madison's request. He claimed Tessa wrote the messages and that Madison approved them. He also admitted telling the group about the old room's automatic deletion schedule. He denied accessing the Foundation archive. The archive log supported that denial. At 3:14 on the examination day, however, he attempted to sign in with his Ridgemont event credentials. The system rejected him. Madison looked at him only once during the entire hearing. He sat at the far end of the room with his parents, separated from every friend he had tried to protect. Tessa's written response argued that her messages were hypothetical discussion and that the article was protected student journalism. The panel displayed her line, "Use money, people believe poor scholarship kids have motive." Then the article's sentence, "A student receiving substantial need-based aid allegedly proposed a financial exchange." The source was not an informant she protected. It was a story she helped manufacture. Chloe admitted receiving the sleeve but said Madison told her it contained reminders, not answers. She admitted showing the contents to Tessa. She denied understanding the numbers. Her examination paper contained 2 of them. Naomi's interview was played last. She sat alone in the same room the previous day, hands wrapped around a paper cup. "Did you know Madison intended to view Evelyn's work?" Judge Price asked in the recording. "Yes." "Did you agree to participate?" "I agreed not to stop them." "Did you receive an answer during the break?" Chloe tried to give me one. "I said no." "Why?" "Because Evelyn looked at the camera." "Explain." Naomi swallowed. She looked at the hallway camera, then at me. I realized everything was being recorded, but it wasn't only fear of getting caught, it was like she was telling me I still had a choice. My eyes burned, had not known whether she understood. "Why did you preserve the group chat?" Madison said there was no way out. "I wanted proof there was." "Did Evelyn promise you favorable treatment?" "No," she told me to get my own advisor and turn over the whole conversation, including the parts that made me look guilty. "Did she ask you to accuse Madison?" "No." "Did she tell you before the examination that Madison would copy?" "No." The recording ended. Judge Price called a short recess. In the hallway, Peter Reed approached Mum. "This can still be contained." Mum stepped between him and me. "Do not speak to my daughter. I am speaking to you." "Then hear me. There is no version of this conversation where my child becomes responsible for containing yours." His face darkened. "You should consider what public conflict does to teenagers. Your wife considered that when she came to our house. Margaret tried to resolve this privately. She tried to buy false silence. People turned." Peter lowered his voice. $25,000 is not false." Mum smiled. "That may be the most honest thing anyone in your family has said." Celeste opened the hearing room door. "The panel is ready." Peter walked away without replying. When the hearing resumed, it was my turn. Judge Price asked the question Madison's attorney had built all morning. "Why did you choose desk B14? "Because it was beneath the Foundation camera." "Did you believe Madison Reed might attempt to view your work?" "Yes." Madison's attorney leaned forward. "So you intended to create evidence against her?" "I intended to make accurate evidence available if she chose to act." "You could have selected a seat with no one behind you. There were no wall-facing desks in the blue zone. You could have asked staff to separate you. Without evidence, I would have had to accuse another candidate before the exam. She might have chosen not to copy. I followed the seating rules and completed my own work. You also made multiple corrections that candidate Reed copied incorrectly. I corrected my work." "Did you deliberately write wrong answers to mislead her?" "No." "How can the panel know that?" I turned toward the writing analyst's chart. "Because both errors are ordinary mistakes supported by complete calculations. Because I corrected them when I found them. Because the scratch sheets were collected before I knew what was on Madison's paper. And because even if I had submitted the first numbers, they were mine to write on my exam." Her attorney's mouth tightened. "You knew the location of a blind spot in Ridgemont's old camera." "Yes." "How?" This was the dangerous question I had prepared answers for. Evidence, procedure, and motive. I had not found a reasonable way to explain knowledge that belonged to another life. I saw the old room diagram in the facilities packet for last year's model legislature event. Not entirely true, there had been a diagram in the packet. I did not study its camera coverage until after my death. Before my death, after the accusation, Judge Price watched me. I felt the lie like a stone beneath my tongue. I had spent 2 lives asking institutions to distinguish my truth from Madison's fabrication. I could not build my victory on an answer designed to evade. That is how I knew the camera positions, I said. It is not the full reason I understood the blind spot. Mum turned. Madison's attorney said, "What is the full reason?" I took a breath. I had a recurring memory of this examination ending differently. The room went still. A dream? Judge Price asked. More than a dream to me. I remembered sitting in the corner, being accused, and discovering later that the footage did not show enough. I cannot prove that memory, and I am not asking the panel to accept it as evidence. Madison stared at me, her face emptied. So your conduct was based on a supernatural belief? Her attorney asked. My choice of a permitted seat was based on caution. Every allegation I have made is based on evidence created in this life. Did the dream tell you Madison would copy? It reminded me she had copied my work before. Mr. Grant's records prove that pattern without the dream. Did it tell you about the fake account? It made me preserve records early. Ryan's device proves who created the account. Did it tell you about the hallway exchange? The video shows what happened. Each time she tried to turn my memory into the case, I returned to verifiable fact. Rebirth had warned me where to look. It had not written a single group chat message, moved a single cup sleeve, or bent Madison's head over my paper. Judge Price raised one hand. The Foundation does not need to determine the origin or nature of Ms. Parker's subjective expectation. The relevant question is whether she violated a rule. Selecting an authorized seat because it was well recorded is not misconduct. Madison's attorney sat back. Judge Price turned to me. Did you communicate with any candidate during the assessment? No. Did you show, transmit, or offer answers? No. Did you instruct Naomi Brooks to alter or selectively produce evidence? No. I told her to preserve everything and obtain independent support. Did you contact any college regarding another candidate? No. Did you publish the allegations? No. Why did you not warn Madison directly? I looked across the table. Madison's eyes were bright now. For years, warning her had meant becoming responsible for what she did after the warning, because she knew copying was wrong before she did it. No one wrote for a moment. Then Judge Price said, "Thank you." The panel separated us for individual interviews. Mum and I waited in a small office overlooking Copley Square. People moved beneath us carrying bags, coffees, and lives that had nothing to do with Ridgemont. You remembered dying, Mum said. The glass reflected both our faces. There was no useful way back from the sentence I had spoken. Yes, in the car, I nodded, and I was there, not in the car. Before, you spent everything trying to help me. You took extra shifts. We almost lost the house. She pressed both hands to her mouth. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted this life to be yours. Not a punishment for what happened in mine. Tears ran over her fingers. You were alone with that, not the second time. She pulled me against her. For several minutes, we did not discuss whether rebirth was scientifically possible, psychologically healthy, or spiritually meaningful. Mum had spent 18 years believing pain before she understood it. She did not stop because this pain arrived from a future no one else remembered. No more protecting me from being your mother, she whispered. Okay, and you are not driving in snow for at least 10 years. A laugh broke through my crying. Okay. At 4, the panel reconvened to announce interim conclusions. Written findings would follow within 5 business days. My result was valid, had not violated any Foundation rule. The panel restored my eligibility immediately. Madison, Chloe, Tessa, and Ryan were removed from the current fellowship competition pending final sanction. Naomi was removed from the current award because she had knowingly remained in a coordinated plan, but the panel credited her refusal to use answers, preservation of evidence, and cooperation. Madison stood. She knew this would happen. Peter caught her wrist. She pulled free. She sat under the camera because she wanted all of us destroyed. Judge Price's voice remained level. Ms. Reed, sit down. She admitted it. She had some dream, and now everyone believes she's innocent because she made sure I was recorded. You were not disciplined for being recorded. Then what am I being disciplined for? Judge Price looked directly at her. For what the recording shows you chose to do. Madison's face collapsed, not into remorse, into disbelief that choice could finally outweigh image. She sat outside the building. Reporters waited because Tessa's article had escaped the school and reached a Boston education blog. Foundation counsel advised us that we were free to leave through the library. Mum looked at the front doors. Do you want to say anything? In my first life, I begged anyone with a platform to hear me. Now Microphones waited, not until the written findings. We left through the library. Silence no longer meant surrender, it meant the truth did not need me to outrun it. The written decision arrived on Friday at 10:00 a.m. I was in calculus. Mr. Grant stood at the board explaining related rates when every senior's phone vibrated inside the collection box near the door. He finished the derivative. Then he looked at me. Would you like to check? Yes. He handed me my phone. The subject line read, Franklin Merit Fellowship. Final eligibility and integrity determination. I opened the attachment. The panel's findings occupied 38 pages. I did not read them first. I searched my name. The panel finds Evelyn Parker completed the assessment independently, complied with all examination rules, promptly reported suspected misconduct, and took reasonable steps to preserve rather than manipulate evidence. Then I searched Madison's. The panel finds Madison Reed intentionally obtained unauthorized access to another candidate's work, transmitted information during the supervised break, participated in fabrication of evidence, and retaliated against the reporting candidate. The sanctions followed. Madison, Chloe, Tessa, and Ryan were permanently disqualified from all current and future Franklin Foundation scholarships, fellowships, internships, and youth leadership programs. Their examination results were void. The foundation referred the findings to Ridgemont under the school's academic integrity agreement and to each candidate's home institution if different. Naomi was disqualified from the current competition but could apply to future foundation programs after completing an ethics requirement. Her cooperation did not erase her silence, it changed what she did after it. My examination score was 96.3, the next highest valid score was 91.7. I had won the Franklin Merit Fellowship, 4 years of tuition, required fees, housing allowance, a funded summer research placement after sophomore year. For a moment, the classroom disappeared. I saw another winter road. Another rejection notice, another version of Mum asleep at the kitchen table beside legal bills. Then Mr. Grant asked, Evelyn. I looked up. I won. The class erupted. Someone banged both hands on a desk. Someone else began crying before I did. Mr. Grant removed his glasses, wiped them unnecessarily, and said the words he used whenever emotion threatened his authority, settle down. No one settled. Madison was not in class. Her permanent disqualification arrived at the same moment as my award. She had spent years believing our futures occupied one seat. If I sat there, she lost. If she pushed me out, she won. The decision proved both parts wrong. I won because of my work, she lost because of hers. Ridgemont's first response was an email about healing. Headmaster Ames wrote that the school community had endured a difficult week and needed privacy, empathy, and confidence in established procedures. He congratulated the unnamed Franklin recipient and said Ridgemont would review recent interpersonal conflict under its student conduct code. Interpersonal conflict, for students had organized academic theft, forged evidence, and used the school newspaper to frame the person they targeted. Ridgemont called it a disagreement between teenagers. Mom read the email in the hospital parking lot before taking me out for a victory dinner. Is he serious? He is hoping everyone is hungry enough for good news that we stop reading after the congratulations. Are we? I looked at the fellowship letter again. For years, the number made every room feel larger. We could celebrate without surrendering the rest. We can eat and be angry. Excellent. I made a reservation somewhere with cloth napkins. At the restaurant, Mom ordered dessert first because she said surviving institutional corruption entitled us to reverse courses. We ate chocolate cake while waiting for pasta, and for 40 minutes we discussed tuition, dorm rooms, and whether I knew how to wash sweaters without shrinking them. Then Celeste called. The Franklin findings triggered Ridgemont's major discipline policy. Because Margaret Reed was a trustee and had attempted to negotiate the outcome, the school's general counsel recommended an independent panel. The board would vote that night. Can they decide not to investigate? Mum asked. They can, Celeste said, but their published academic integrity agreement requires them to accept final examination findings from Franklin unless they document a procedural defect. There wasn't one. No. Then why does the headmaster's email sound like nothing happened? Celeste paused. Institutions often prefer emotional language when factual language creates obligations. I thought of Mr. Grant's sentence about kindness. Different room, same mechanism. What should we do? I asked. You are not required to do anything tonight. If the school initiates proceedings, you may submit an impact statement and the foundation record. If it does not, there are appeal routes. And the article, the foundation's counsel sent a correction demand because it misstates the final result. That issue belongs to the newspaper and the school. Tessa wrote it as part of the plan, which is why this is no longer a normal dispute over editorial judgment. At 9, the board voted to appoint an outside panel. Margaret did not vote. She also did not resign. On Monday, she sent every Ridgemont family an email from the Reed Family Foundation. Our daughter is experiencing a serious mental health crisis after an adversarial testing process. We ask the community to reject public shaming and remember that young people deserve opportunities to learn from mistakes. The email did not mention the fake account. It did not mention the plan began 3 weeks before the exam. It did not mention that Madison had accused me publicly while the foundation was still sealing booklets. It described consequences as illness and evidence as cruelty. Madison did not owe anyone her medical history. She was entitled to treatment, privacy, and protection from harassment. She was not entitled to use mental health as an eraser. I made no public response. Instead, I sent the email to the independent panel with one question: does a sitting trustee's direct communication to all school families comply with the non-retaliation and confidentiality rules? The panel issued a preservation notice 2 hours later. The board instructed Margaret to stop using school distribution lists. The next day, she took a temporary leave. That was how her power began to fail, not in a ballroom, but through permissions she could no longer assume. Tessa's article remained online with an editor's note. The Franklin Foundation has disputed certain allegations in this article. Disputed, as if the fake account were one interpretation among many. The faculty advisor, Ms. Delgado, had been absent on the examination day. Tessa used her editor credentials to publish without pre-publication review. When Ms. Delgado returned, she examined the group chat and the article drafts. Version history showed Tessa wrote the accusation at 10:36 the night before the exam. The line, "one student appeared to make her paper deliberately visible," existed before any student sat down. The anonymous source quotation existed before the alleged conduct. Tessa had not reported a rumor quickly. She had prepared the public half of the trap. The newspaper replaced the article with a correction in the same position on its homepage. It named me because I gave permission. Evelyn Parker did not offer, sell, or transmit Franklin examination answers. The original article relied on fabricated evidence created in coordination with its student author. Parker completed the assessment independently and received the highest valid score. The Ridgemont Review apologizes for publishing a planned allegation as reporting. The correction stayed pinned for 30 days. Tessa lost editor access immediately. She posted on her private account that powerful adults had forced a student journalist to recant. Ms. Delgado answered once, "Press freedom protects investigation and criticism. It does not convert participation in a fabrication into journalism." Tessa deleted her post. Screenshots remained. The school panel held 4 days of confidential hearings in November. I attended only the common evidence session and my own interview. I did not sit through every excuse. I did not need to watch each friend abandon Madison when protecting her became expensive. The written summaries told enough. Ryan admitted that Madison promised her mother could help him secure a summer position with a venture capital firm if he assisted with reputation management. He understood the fake account would be used against me. He claimed the archive login attempt was meant only to learn whether the new camera had recorded the room. Chloe admitted she copied 2 numbers from the sleeve. She said Madison had assured her that I agreed to share. The group chat showed Chloe knew the plan used a blind spot. Tessa blamed competitive pressure and claimed Madison exploited her desire to become a journalist. Naomi admitted she should have reported the plan before the examination. She did not ask the panel to call her innocent. Madison denied everything. She had not typed personally. Ryan created the account. Tessa wrote the article. Chloe passed the sleeve. Her mother proposed the settlement. According to Madison, she had merely been present while other people misunderstood her needs. The panel chair asked why she wrote, "Once I have the answers, she becomes the cheat." Madison said it was dark humor. Why did she sit behind me after I moved? Coincidence? Why did she copy my abandoned answers? Shared preparation? Why did she submit the fake conversation? She trusted Ryan. Why did she text me asking to say we had studied together? Panic. Why did she tell me staying in the corner would have prevented the problem? Stress. Every answer treated her own intention as the one missing fact no evidence could reach. The panel reached it anyway. Ridgemont's code reserved expulsion for severe or repeated dishonesty, technology abuse causing substantial harm, retaliation, or conduct that fundamentally violated community trust. The school had once used that language against a student who altered a teacher's recommendation letter. This case contained all 4 categories. Madison and Ryan were expelled. Madison organized the plan and pursued the false accusation after the exam. Ryan committed digital impersonation, used school-controlled resources, and attempted unauthorized archive access. Tessa's family withdrew her before the sanction was announced, under Ridgemont policy. Withdrawal did not erase a pending finding. Her transcript recorded that she left during a substantiated major discipline proceeding. The National Student Press Association revoked an award she had received for ethics reporting the previous year. Chloe was suspended through the end of the semester, removed from the National Honor Society, barred from graduation honors, and placed on disciplinary probation. The panel distinguished her participation from the organizers but rejected her claim that friendship eliminated choice. Naomi received probation and a required ethics project. She retained the right to graduate with her class but lost her student council office. The findings stated that prompt reporting before the exam would have prevented harm, while later cooperation materially limited it. The panel also found that Ridgemont administrators failed to manage Margaret's conflict promptly. She attended a fact-finding meeting, contacted me at home, proposed money in exchange for withdrawing reports, and used a family distribution list while still a trustee. The board requested her resignation. She refused. The bylaws required a 2/3 vote to remove a trustee. The vote was 11-1. Margaret was the one. Peter Reed withdrew a pending $3 million pledge for the new athletic center the next morning. For 6 hours, parents predicted disaster. Then alumni who had never been asked for less glamorous gifts created a matching fund. 184 families contributed. The athletic center was delayed, reduced in size, and eventually funded without naming rights or conditions tied to individual students. Ridgemont discovered that Margaret's money had seemed irreplaceable because the school preferred one large permission to many smaller relationships. The lesson resembled my Franklin essay closely enough to be satisfying. Headmaster Ames issued a second community letter. This one used nouns and verbs. It stated that a group of students had planned to obtain another candidate's work, fabricated evidence, and published a false allegation. It stated that the candidate was Evelyn Parker. It stated that I had won the Franklin Fellowship through independent work. It also acknowledged the school had responded too slowly to trustee interference. He did not call it healing, he called it failure. Mum printed the letter. For the lawyer file, I asked, for the refrigerator. She fixed it beneath a magnet shaped like a lobster. In my first life, the refrigerator held overdue bills and a schedule of my grocery shifts. This time, it held a truth the institution had written itself. I did not need it there forever. Mum did, so it stayed. College decisions did not arrive as one dramatic punishment. Ridgemont had an obligation to update colleges when a senior received a major final disciplinary finding after applying. The school sent the same factual summary for every affected student. It did not demand rescission and did not speculate beyond the record. Madison's early action offer from Hartwell University, a fictional private university outside Philadelphia whose name her family had already printed on holiday cards, was withdrawn in December. The letter cited material dishonesty and failure to disclose the pending investigation when asked for updates. Margaret appealed. Hartwell upheld the decision. Peter called 3 trustees he knew. They referred him to admissions counsel. Madison applied elsewhere, but every application required her to answer the disciplinary question truthfully. She could still attend college. Community colleges, state universities, and private programs all had routes for students with conduct records. What she could no longer do was enter through the polished version of herself while hiding the people she had stepped on. Ryan lost his early decision place at a technical institute after the school reviewed his digital impersonation and unauthorized access attempt. Tessa's colleges delayed decisions pending the outcome recorded on her transcript. Chloe was admitted to a state university after submitting a statement that acknowledged her conduct. She complained that the required explanation made her relive the worst day of her life. I did not point out that she had helped design the worst year of mine. Naomi withdrew her Georgetown application before a decision and applied to programs farther from the Reed family's influence. She did not ask Margaret for another recommendation. In January, she approached me in the library. I finished the ethics project. Okay. She placed a bound report on the table. The title was Bystanders, Dependency, and the Cost of Delayed Reporting. You don't have to read it. Then why bring it? Because part of it is an apology. I did not touch the report. You can apologize without giving me an assignment. Her cheeks reddened. You're right. She stood. I knew enough to stop it. I told myself not using the answers made me different, but I let them plan around you. Because I was afraid Madison would take back her recommendation. I'm sorry. It was a good apology, specific, unprotected by excuses. It did not restore trust. Thank you for saying it. Do you forgive me? The old Evelyn would have answered immediately. Forgiveness had been another service I provided so other people could stop feeling uncomfortable. I don't know yet. Naomi nodded. That's fair. She took the report and left. Months later, I read it after the school published an anonymized version in its ethics curriculum. It was thoughtful work. I still did not Become her friend, a boundary did not invalidate growth that happened beyond it. Madison returned to Ridgemont once in February to collect personal items and complete transfer records. I saw her through the library windows. She crossed the courtyard without her student council blazer. Snow lay in dirty ridges beside the paths. 2 administrators accompanied her because expelled students could not move through campus alone. She looked up, even through the glass. She found me, her face contained something I had never seen there before, not guilt, not hatred, uncertainty. The next move was no longer being arranged for her. I looked back down at my book. At 4, snow began falling heavily. The weather service issued a warning. Ridgemont canceled evening activities, and Mom texted that she would pick me up after her shift. County Road 6 would ice first. The knowledge entered my body before thought. My hands went cold. The library lights sharpened. Somewhere outside, a plow scraped pavement with the same metallic roar that had preceded the impact in my first life. February 12, the date of my death. I checked the time, 5:38 p.m. In the other life, I had clocked out of the grocery store at 11. The assistant manager asked me to stay because another cashier called sick. I refused because Mom had texted about a leak in the roof. At 11:26, I drove east on County Road 6. At 11:31, a pickup crossed the median. Now I sat inside a heated library with a full fellowship and no grocery uniform in my locker. The accident might not happen. Someone else might drive that road. Rebirth had changed me, not weather. I opened the state traffic app and saw the storm advisory escalate. I sent it to Mom. Do not take County Road 6. I'll stay at school or go home with Mrs. Alvarez. She replied, already staying at hospital. Roads are closing. Go with Alvarez. No heroics. At 11:34, I lay awake in Mrs. Alvarez's guest room. The traffic app reported a 2-vehicle collision near the County Road 6 median. Both drivers had non-life-threatening injuries. Road crews had installed new temporary barriers after a crash the previous autumn. No one died. I pressed the phone to my chest. The universe had not required a body to balance mine. A dangerous road could become safer. A corrupt process could be changed. A future did not have to repeat its worst event with different names. At midnight, my 19th birthday began. I was older than I had ever been. I cried quietly beneath a quilt patterned with yellow flowers. Not because I was afraid, but because time had finally moved past the point where it once stopped. In March, Brown University admitted me. The email arrived at 7:03 p.m. Mom stood behind my chair, refusing to look directly at the screen because she believed this would reduce disappointment. I opened the portal. The first word was congratulations. Mom screamed. Mrs. Alvarez screamed through the wall because Mom screamed. I laughed until I could not breathe. Brown's financial aid offer already met most of our demonstrated need. The Franklin Fellowship covered the remaining tuition, standard housing allowance, fees, books, and a summer policy research placement. For the first time since my father died, Mom did not calculate a dream against overtime hours. She sat at the kitchen table and wrote 0 on a piece of paper. What is that? How much debt you need? The fellowship housing allowance may not cover every personal expense. She crossed out 0 and wrote, 1 winter coat, non-negotiable. She said, Providence is cold. I accepted Brown's offer in April. Mr. Grant brought cupcakes to statistics with brown frosting so dark it stained everyone's teeth. The literary magazine published a special issue on academic ownership, not about my case alone but about collaboration, credit, and the difference between help and appropriation. Ridgemont adopted new rules. Trustees and major donors could not participate in individual discipline, admissions counseling, awards, or academic review involving their children. Anonymous accusations could trigger preservation and inquiry, but not final interim harm without documented risk. Student publications handling misconduct allegations required advisor notice and source authentication records, while retaining editorial independence. Technology administrators could not use shared recovery addresses to create student accounts. External examinations had to use independent recording whenever school employees or trustees had conflicts. Headmaster Ames asked whether the policy package could be called the Parker Protocol. No, he blinked. You object to the name. I object to making fairness sound like a favor created for one student. What would you call it? The Academic Evidence and Conflict Policy. It was boring. Boring rules survived attention better than heroic names. The board adopted it unanimously. The following month, a sophomore received an automatic notice when an administrator reopened her science fair file after judging. The change was legitimate. A corrupted attachment had been replaced, but the notice created a record and prevented suspicion. The system worked even when no villain appeared. That pleased me more than a plaque. Franklin held its award ceremony in May at the Boston Public Library. The 30 original finalists were not invited as a group. only valid recipients and their families attended. There were no empty chairs labeled with disqualified names. Consequences did not require a stage. Dr. Walsh introduced me. Evelyn Parker demonstrated outstanding quantitative reasoning, policy analysis, and argumentative writing. She also demonstrated something an examination cannot always measure: respect for evidence under pressure. Mums sat in the front row wearing the dark green dress she normally saved for weddings. Mr. Grant sat beside her. When I stepped to the lectern, camera shutters clicked. For a second, I was back at B14 with Madison behind me. Then I saw the room as it was. No one was copying, no one was waiting for me to move my arm. My speech was not about Madison. I spoke about systems that place too much responsibility on individuals to prove harm after records disappear. I spoke about audit trails, independent review, and why low-income students often experience informal resolution as pressure to accept whatever preserves an institution's comfort. Integrity cannot mean asking the less powerful person to be quieter, I said. A fair process protects truth before it knows whose reputation the truth may inconvenience. Afterward, a reporter asked whether I had chosen the camera seat to expose classmates. I chose a permitted seat where the examination would be accurately recorded. Did you know they would cheat? I knew a risk existed. Do you regret not warning them? I looked into the reporter's camera. Every candidate heard the same warning before the exam. The clip spread farther than Tessa's article. This time, the sentence attached to my face was true. Graduation arrived beneath a white June sky. Ridgemont held the ceremony on the south lawn, where rows of folding chairs sank unevenly into the grass. Families carried flowers, umbrellas, and cameras. The trustees sat on stage without Margaret Reed. Chloe graduated without honors and did not walk in the front rows. Naomi graduated with ordinary standing. Her parents applauded as if she had won every medal. Perhaps, for them, choosing a different person after a serious failure was worth applause. Tessa did not attend. Ryan and Madison were not students of Ridgemont. Their absence was not announced. I wore the blue Franklin stole over my white gown. Mom adjusted it 6 times. It is straight, I said. It could be straighter. Geometry disagrees. Mr. Grant passed and said, her conclusion is supported by the available data. Mom ignored him and adjusted it again. During the ceremony, Headmaster Ames read the Latin Honors, Service Awards, and Scholarship list. When he called my name for Franklin, applause rose across the lawn. Not everyone stood. They did not need to. I no longer measured truth by unanimity. After diplomas, I found an envelope tucked beneath the windshield wiper of Mum's car. No stamp, my name in Madison's handwriting. Mum saw it. Do you want me to open it? No. I read it while she loaded flowers into the trunk. Madison wrote from an online completion program where she was finishing high school credits. She had begun therapy. She hated the therapist. She hated the ethics tutor her new school required. She hated every adult who asked her to describe events without beginning with what someone else made her feel. She wrote that her parents barely spoke except through attorneys. Her mother blamed her father for failing to control the board. Her father blamed her mother for creating the settlement offer. Both blamed Ridgemont. Then came the sentence I expected. You knew what would happen and let me do it anyway. Below it, if you had turned around before the exam and said you knew, I would have stopped. I almost laughed. Perhaps she believed it. Perhaps in one branch of time, I warned her and she found a quieter method. Perhaps she would have stopped that day and copied someone else the next month. Warnings had never changed Madison because she treated them as information about how much I would tolerate. At the bottom, she wrote, I don't know who I am if I'm not the person everyone thought I was. That was the first honest line. I folded the letter. Mum closed the trunk. Do you want to answer? Not today. I placed it in my bag. I did answer 2 weeks later. For sentences, I did not make you copy my exam, fabricate messages, or accuse me. Choosing a recorded seat did not remove your ability to choose differently. Losing a false identity may feel like losing everything, but it leaves you the chance to build one that is true. That work belongs to you. I sent no forgiveness. I sent no promise of friendship. I did not explain how to repair her applications, what to tell a future college, or how to rebuild trust with her parents. In my first life, I would have written a plan. This life was mine to live, not hers to manage. August smelled like cardboard and rain. Mum and I packed the car for Providence with 2 suitcases, a desk lamp, bedding, a second-hand mini fridge, and the winter coat she had declared non-negotiable. Before leaving, I opened the box that held my father's papers. His watch lay beside the life insurance letter and a photograph of the 3 of us at a beach when I was 6. The watch had been sealed in my phone pouch during the Franklin exam. I had stopped wearing it afterward because every tick reminded me of counting toward a death no one else remembered. Now I fastened it around my wrist. Time was no longer pursuing me, it was accompanying me. At Brown, my dorm room overlooked a courtyard full of students dragging furniture in impossible directions. My roommate, Marisol, arrived from New Mexico with 6 plants and no hangers. Mum attempted to reorganize both our desks until I walked her gently toward the door. Call me, every day, not every day, you'll get annoyed, then every other day, eat vegetables. The dining hall owns some. She hugged me. When she left, I stood in the center of the room and waited for fear. It came. What if Brown received another accusation? What if someone changed my fellowship record? What if cameras failed? What if evidence disappeared? I opened the Franklin portal. My award agreement was there. I downloaded 1 copy and saved it to my encrypted drive. Then I closed the laptop. Evidence was meant to protect a life. It was not meant to replace one. Marisol held up 2 plants. Which one looks less likely to die near your window? What direction does the window face? I was hoping you'd know. We spent 10 minutes using a compass app and still disagreed. It was wonderfully unimportant. My first semester included introductory public policy, multivariable calculus, a writing seminar, and a campus job at the library's data services desk. I made mistakes no one could turn into moral collapse. I overslept once. I misread a syllabus. I submitted a graph with 2 colors almost impossible to distinguish. The professor asked me to revise it. No investigator appeared. Fair correction felt nothing like punishment designed to erase me. In October, Dr. Walsh invited me to speak briefly to the next Franklin finalists before their assessment. The examination had moved to a university conference center. Assigned seating replaced open seating, not because open seating caused cheating but because fixed assignments simplified review. Cameras covered every desk with overlapping angles, break materials were transparent, and candidates remained in separate zones. I stood at the front of the room while 30 seniors waited with sealed packets. Some looked confident, some looked ill. One girl in the second row gripped her pencil exactly as I once had. I did not tell them my whole story. Your work belongs to you, I said. Follow the rules, preserve your reasoning, and ask questions when a procedure is unclear. You are not responsible for making someone else's choices look innocent. Dr. Walsh gave the formal warning. The clock reached 9. I left before the seals broke. In the lobby, a monitor displayed all camera feeds for proctors. No blind strips, no desk dependent on one angle. No student had to know where to sit to be protected. That was the real victory. Not that I had become better at surviving a bad system. The system had become harder to abuse. Outside, the Charles River moved beneath a clear sky. Mum texted, "Did you terrify the new finalists?" I replied, "Only appropriately." She sent a photograph of our repaired roof. The leak had never become an emergency in this life. Without legal bills and lost shifts, she had paid for the work in spring. The shingles looked ordinary and solid. I saved the photograph, not in an evidence folder, in favorites, as I walked toward the train. I passed a storefront television playing a local education segment. For 1 second, my own face appeared beside the headline. Franklin reforms exam security after Ridgemont case. Then the image changed to the testing center and the overlapping camera system. Madison's photograph did not appear, neither did Chloe's, Tessa's, or Ryan's. The reform did not need their faces to remain useful. I stopped on the bridge and looked at the water. In my first life, I thought revenge would mean forcing Madison to experience every humiliation she gave me. Some of that happened. She lost the fellowship she tried to steal. She lost the school status she used as a weapon. Her college withdrew the future she had already displayed as if it were guaranteed. Her friends could no longer protect her without explaining their own choices. I would be lying if I said none of it satisfied me. It did, but the sharpest pleasure came from what she failed to take. Mum's savings, our house, my college admission, my name, the version of me who could make a mistake without begging permission to remain a good person. Madison once believed the camera was the weapon I used against her. She was wrong. The camera did not invent a single consequence. It did not make her lean forward. It did not write the fake messages. It did not pass the cup sleeve, publish the accusation, or offer money for silence. It simply refused to forget. That morning at Ridgemont, I chose desk B14 because I remembered what darkness allowed people to deny. Then I sat in the clearest place in the room and completed my own work. Behind me, Madison and her friends made their choices. Above us, the camera saw everything. This time, so did everyone else. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time. 1.